Hi, this is Jim Moyna with Moyna Bass Fishes, and this is the recap of the 2023 MLF Invitational on Clarks Hill Lake. As you can see, since the end of the tournament, we've had this monster snowstorm here in Clarks Hill. Look at all that snow. Holy cow, it's quite unexpected. But anyhow, let's just get into it. How did I catch my fish on Clarks Hill? Okay, well, here's just how it kind of broke down strategy-wise. When I got there, the first day of practice, I saw where the water temperatures were, and I saw the forecast, and I knew there was a good chance that fish were going to start moving up into the backs of coves and looking for beds, and maybe even start bedding. But anyways, I started out practice doing a lot of cranking. First couple days, caught a 7-pounder the first day of practice, caught some other decent fish, some nice spotted bass even, and the 7-pounder, he was on a point, and it was a point that kind of just fell off quickly into deeper water. What made the point unique was it just had some dirt and gravel, but then it had some like magnum-sized boulders on that point, including one that was off in about 7 foot of water that came up to about 4 foot high. So it was about a 3 to 4 foot high boulder out in 7 foot, and that's what that 7-pounder was hanging on. I threw my crankbait. Well, first I saw the boulder on the Lowrance active target, threw my crankbait. I think I took 2 or 3 casts to that boulder before she hit, and I was right at the end of the day after tournament hours, what would be tournament hours. So, and I've noticed that a lot of times over the years, I've caught a lot of quality fish and had good flurries right in the last 45 minutes of the day, after tournament type hours. So it was exciting to catch a fish like that for sure, but at the same time it's kind of like fool's gold, because you just feel like that ain't gonna happen in the tournament. So anyways, let's get to the third day of practice. I did more cranking, and the crankbait that I caught that 7-pounder on was one of those flat-sided shallow running crankbaits. Then the third day of practice, I don't know, I couldn't really bid on that very well. So then I started getting into the backs of these pockets with a little bit of wind, and the temperatures are right up there at 60 degrees, pushing 60 degrees, which is kind of the flip point for getting the spawners going. So anyways, I started throwing a smaller crankbait, probably ran about 4 feet, but I was throwing it up into the backs of the pockets, up into like 2 feet of water, and oftentimes you'd be dragging in pine needles and just other debris from the bottom. But I caught 3 really nice ones doing that in just a few hours of time, and caught a few other just smaller fish. But they were really nice largemouths on that crankbait. And so I was pretty excited. I felt like, I was excited, but I was cautiously excited because, that last day of practice, those fish were right up where they're going to be spawning. I don't think they're quite bedded yet. And then, and plus I caught one on a topwater that afternoon of the last day of practice. Just up in really shallow water in the back of a pocket, and I threw it up there and just started winding this topwater. It was a prop bait, and I was winding it steady, and then sure enough, I saw this wake come forward and just absolutely destroy the bait. So that had me pretty excited. So the fish were hitting winding baits in the backs of pockets on that last day of practice, which was really cool. However, the off day presented 80+ degree high temperatures and sunshine all day. So I knew that's bad for a crankbait bite in my opinion. If you got a pre-spawn crankbait bite and water temperatures start creeping up into the spawning temperature zone of 60+, a crankbait bite can really suffer. So I was kind of concerned about that. The off day was just sunny and hot, and but I prepared. I had some stuff ready to go. I had some wacky rig stuff ready to go for the fishing, isolate covering the backs of pockets. So I was ready to make the switch over from winding baits to wacky worming type baits, where if fish kind of got a little more tippet about their willingness to chase something down. So anyways, first day of the tournament, I'm boat 7. So I got the short day. But anyways, I decide that, why not start where I caught the 7-pounder, right? So, of course, I go there and I catch nothing. So, so then I decide that I'm going to go and, the plan was just to fish for the first half of the day, just hit a lot of the good points I found, a lot of places where I caught the largemouths, and take it from there and just see how well I do. Well, turns out I didn't do very well. I caught one on a crankbait, like 1.5 pounds or so, and I ended up catching another fish off of a Tricky D on a Texas rig that I spotted on the active target, probably out in about 8 foot of water. But the crankbait bite was just dead, and I was throwing the backs of pockets. I was throwing it on the points. I just wasn't getting it going, so I finally decided to make the switch halfway through the day and just started fishing all backs of pockets with wacky rigs. And that's when I started producing more bites. I got one nice one really quick doing that. It was like a 3-pounder. And then, I don't know, but it was still kind of a tough bite. I mean, it still wasn't like super hot, on fire type of a bite. It was, just had to make a lot of slow presentations to isolated bushes in the backs of these pockets and little laydowns and stuff, and every once in a while you catch one. And unfortunately, I only had one quality bite that first day, and I weighed 10.14, put me in 85th place. Very disappointed. I really felt like had I had a late draw that first day, I would have caught more fish and upgraded. But having to be in the first flight, that kind of sucked. But I probably should have switched off the crankbait pattern sooner, maybe an hour sooner, which would have gave me another hour of wacky rigging, and maybe I would have got 1 or 2 more bites doing that, and maybe one of them would have been a good one, or 2 of them, who knows, or maybe I would have had 3 bites, who knows. But anyways, so that's kind of how the first day went down. So the second day, the strategy was, okay, I'm just going to hit the backs of the pot. I can just start right away with wacky rigging and just see how that goes. And sure enough, I caught the 4-pounder right away the second day, and I pretty much wacky rigged almost all day that second day until it got towards the end. And I got saved by a swim bait fish on a 3-pounder that bit a swim bait. And that fish, I already had some good fish in the live well, but I had one little one in there. And that 3-pounder took out literally it was like a 13-incher. So that was a nice upgrade, which was the deal sealer to put me in 49th. Third day, the last day of the tournament, again, I did I committed to the wacky rig early, and I was catching small fish. I could not get a good bite. And I finally got a limit for probably about 6.5 pounds, and it just wasn't happening very well. But then I got into this one pocket, and I'm fishing all new water for the most part, mostly new water. And I get into this one pocket where there's just an excessive amount of pollen, and it's like it's so thick, it's like matted like duckweed in the back of this pocket. And there's one bush back there, and I get this idea that I'm going to run this topwater by this bush right on the surface. So I cast it past this bush, and it's a depths buzz jet is what it is. And I start reeling it, and it wakes on the surface. And right when I got to that bush, man, this nice fish just plowed it. And I got that fish in the boat, and it was like nearly, it was probably like 3 3/4 to 4 pounds. I didn't weigh it individually, but that's just estimating. So now I'm like pumped. It's probably about 11:15 or so, and I'm really pumped. I'm thinking, all right, I got till 3 o'clock. I can do this the rest of the day, maybe mix in a big spinnerbait too if necessary in the backs of these pockets. And an hour and a half later of doing that, I hadn't had another bite. So I started getting a little discouraged on that. And not only that, I got into a part of the lake where it seems like every other pocket there was the competition. So I'm like, man, I don't want to be fishing worked over water because the fish I'm catching are so isolated. There'd be like one bush in the back of the pocket, and that's where the fish would be, kind of a thing. So I decided to just get out of that section of the lake, went to another section. There wasn't anybody over there, and the fish weren't over there either. I fished over there for the last 2 hours. I caught one good one on a wacky rig over there. There was a brush pile in the center of a pocket, and it was a deep pocket, so the brush pile was probably in about 7 foot of water, and actually a couple of the tops stuck out above the water a little bit. That's how I saw it over there. And I threw the wacky rig over there, let it, just didn't move it, let it sink, and a nice like 3 1/4, 3.5 pounder grabbed it, and got that one in the boat. Ended up calling one other fish. He probably gained just a few ounces because I had those 2 good ones. That last day I had those 2 good ones, and then I had 3 like 1.5 pounders. So just missing out on some more quality bites. But I had 13.8, moved up to 4. So after day 1, I was 85th. After day 2, 49th, and then ended up 41st. So I'm pleased with that progression of moving up the leaderboard. It was important as far as getting a check. The last check gets 50th place. It was important as getting Angler of the Year points. As far as Angler of the Year goes, I'm in 22nd place, and that is my ultimate goal, is to qualify for the Bass Pro Tour, and you need to be in the top 8 in Angler of the Year points. I'm 22nd right now, so got some work to do, got some catching up to do. A guy has to average, according to my calculations, guy has to average 31st place in each tournament to make enough points to be in the top 8 for the year. So I'm a little off that pace, but it's totally, it's totally within reach. One top 10, next tournament, if I top 10 it, I mean, I'm right there on pace to make that top 8 again. So I'm not too far off the pace. Just got to keep catching them. And one thing, after 2 tournaments now, I'll say this, it hasn't been my, well, it's been a little bit of everything, but what's really has saved me is I've always considered myself a good, fundamentally sound fisherman as far as matching hooks and weights and line to rods and reels. And if you do that properly, you'll get the best action on your baits, but also you'll do the best job at hooking a fish and keeping that fish hooked, which has been very important for me because in Okeechobee, all my big quality, I didn't have a lot of big quality bites, but every one I had got in the live well. Same thing with this last tournament on Clark's Hill. All my quality bites, except one the second day. I had one jump off the second day. That was a 3 pounder, but all the other really quality bites that were like 3 pounders or bigger, those all ended up at the weigh-in. So I don't believe in jinxes. I was going to say, hope I don't jinx myself now for the next one, but anyways, that's been a good thing. That's a part of my fishing that I always feel is a strength, is that fundamental equipment matchup. So so I got enough of the right bites and got them in. So that's very important. That's what's got me where I'm at. Now I'm going to pull out a few rods here now. These rods are some of the baits that I was using at Clark's Hill to put me into the top 10. Okay, here is the, this is a wacky rig, Senko, just on a number 2 hook. Wacky rig, for those of you new to it, wacky rig means you hook the hook goes through the center of the worm, and that's a weedless or a open hook one, which I always feel like my best hooking percentage is on that open hook variety. The minute I start putting weed guards, brush guards on my hooks, hooking percentage goes down. So whenever I can use that, like I'll use that in light vegetation to moderate vegetation before I'll start putting brush guards on. Not that there was a lot of vegetation at Clark's Hill. What there was brush and stumps. So I ended up using the brush guarded one the most. And here there's an example of the brush guard. You can see the little spines on there. Those are little, like, I think there's tungsten wire. And this is the hook I was using. And I had the worm rigged on here the same way, wacky rigged. And I use this most of the time because I was throwing to lay downs, I was throwing to just little bushes and stuff like that. And you're just not going to bring it through the bush with an open hook. So here's an interesting little setup that I never really caught much on it in the tournament because I didn't throw it much, but it is a good spotted bass rig. This drop shot with the that little worm on there, it's good spotted bass setup. But because, you know, I could have caught a lot of spotted bass this tournament, but I feel like that wasn't going to. I felt like the large, from what I saw in practice, all my quality fish were the largemouths. All the 3+ pounders are largemouths. So I was going to dedicate all my time to largemouths and not worry about catching 2.5 pound spotted bass, which you could catch. I did catch plenty of like 2 to 2.5 pounders, maybe even a little bigger than 2.5 pounds, which would have been nice to have, you know, like especially like the last day when I had 3 1.5 pounders. But, you know, you just never know when you're going to get that 5, 6, 7 pound bite, and you are not going to get that with a spotted bass. That, I mean, chances are you're not, anyways. Oh, okay. So that is a well, that's a Texas rig that I set up for bedding fish, and I did see some bedding fish. The first bedding fish I actually saw was on the second day of the tournament, and I saw multiple bedding fish, and I caught one of my big females that second day was a fish I saw. I barely saw it off in the distance. I barely saw it. I'm like, I was looking up towards the back of this pocket, and I'm like, is that a fish sitting like right under the surface? Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a stick or just some kind of weird shadow or whatever. But I mean, I threw that bait over there, and I think I talked about it in my day 2 recap video. But yeah, that was really cool catching that fish. All right, here, this bait here. Oh, you know, no matter how careful you put them in there, they always end up tangled. All right, if you've seen any of my other recap videos from other tournaments, you've probably seen this bait before. Okay, that's the all-terrain tackle smallie smasher head with just a little swim bait on there. And anytime you get in a spotted bass lake, that's a great bait to throw. I didn't throw it much in the tournament. However, it saved my ass on day 2 because it caught me the 3-pounder that it caught me my final quality fish, that 3-pounder, and towards the end of the day that put me up in 49th. It also lost that 3-pound. The one quality fish I lost in the tournament was on that, and it was literally like 10 minutes beforehand. Okay, what do we got? What's in this one? Oh, crankbait. This crankbait here. This was the one that was doing well in the back. It's a little one. It was doing well in the backs of them pockets. It probably dives about 4 to 5 feet, and but they just shut off on it on me. I caught one on it the first day of the tournament. That was, you know, 1.5-pounder, but they just didn't work for me. Sorry there. I don't know, just another, here's a swim bait that I didn't really use much. All-terrain tackle, swim bait. Fritz side. Here's one of the crankbaits that's thrown quite a bit. They call this the Fritz side by Berkeley. And actually the one I caught 7-pounder on was the red crawdad, but I caught a bunch on this color too, and for whatever reason I decided I went with this color mostly for the tournament. And it failed because I think any crankbait color would have failed me. Okay. Oh, yes, this bait here, which is tangled up with these other rods. All right, so we got, yeah, you know, no matter how careful you put them in there, they just got to get with one another. All right, so this is the Tricky D by Billy Rub Baits, and I've really starting to like this worm. Okay, it's a straight tail worm. Okay, and I had a rig Texas rig, which means, you know, you got the slip sinker on the front of it, and, you know, Texas rig it like such. Okay, so this was good. I was using this quite a bit for my active target fishing. You know, I'd see a brush pile or a rock out in deeper water, and I'd throw this over there. Sometimes I'd see blips that were fish, and throw it out there, and it did a pretty good job at picking up fish doing that. Caught a lot in practice, caught a lot of spotted bass on this thing. This and that drop shot I showed you a minute ago. But like I said, I kind of got away from doing that because I didn't want to catch 2 and 2.5 pounders. I wanted to catch bigger fish, which were the largemouths. Horny toad, I thought that might be a good bait for the backs of those pockets if they wanted a moving bait. Probably didn't throw it enough to really know if it would have worked or not. I never caught one on it. And fish, fish it some, but not a bunch. So here's what I caught my biggest fish on the last day of the tournament when I said I got it into that pocket with the matted pollen. Oh, there was so much. The pollen was crazy. And you know what? I made a mistake. The night before the last day of the tournament, I left my truck windows open, and the pollen got all over in my truck inside because there was a little bit of breeze or something, and it was just a massive dusting coat of pollen inside my truck, and it's still there. I haven't cleaned it yet. So yeah, so this is what's called the Depths Buzz Jet, and I did a whole video on this, I don't know, a year or two ago. And in that video, I describe how it's the one bait that's let me down more than any other bait in tournaments. It's always good for a quality fish in practice or fun fishing and never in competition. But finally, we broke through and actually caught a really nice largemouth with it. And so that was fun. It's always a fun bite. It's one of those baits that I've just got an addiction to because you wake it back and it's just got this tantalizing waking sachet as you reel it. And I have caught, I remember on Lake Eufaula in Alabama a few years ago, man, in one of my practice days, I freaking just lit it up on that thing. But of course in the tournament, no go. Here's a flipping, I never got much into flipping jigs on this tournament. There's an all-terrain tackle, AT jig that I had all set to go. Another Texas rig. There's a big spinnerbait that I probably should have threw more. A rattle trap I tied up, never even threw it, and top water never threw. So yeah, really the main stuff that I use is you've seen now. So I don't know. It was an amazing tournament, lots of fun. And I'm scared, these first two actually the first three. The next one's Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma, which isn't for like another month or so. But these first two had been nemesis of mine. Okeechobee was a nemesis. It had burned me so many times, and I got through that one okay. And Clarks Hill, the two times I've been to Clarks Hill, I've been just bad finishes on Clarks Hill. Even though those two times were fall tournaments, just bad finishes. So came through those two in okay shape. Need to have a top caliber tournament to make up for the just slightly under the pace tournaments I've had so far. But not complaining where I'm at. I'll take it. There wasn't a whole lot of missed opportunities in these first two tournaments, other than had I fished completely different areas. And speaking of fishing completely different areas. Now, at Clarks Hill, you had a choice of watercolor, okay? You could have fished absolutely mud dirt water, or you could fish water where it maybe had 3 foot clarity. And I kind of leaned towards the more clear water with the thought of thinking that there'll be enough fish moving up into the clear, even though clear water heats less and is going to be a little behind the dirty water. I was thinking enough of those fish might move up, and I would have a chance of actually spotting some and working them. Well, I didn't really spot that many. I've spotted a few, and most of the ones I spotted had no interest in me trying to catch them at all. So I think that might have been a fault in my strategy. Perhaps had I targeted the pockets in some of the dirtier water, those would have been a little warmer, a little further in the progression of the spawn, and maybe you would have had more fish drawn into those pockets and then of course I would have had more opportunities to catch fish. Because I'll tell you, that last 2 hours of the third day, I picked some clear water, and I mean, it was some of the clearest water I'd fished, and there just wasn't much up at all in those pockets. So anyhow, that is my summation of the Clarks Hill event, and thanks for watching. I got to get back to shoveling snow. Over.